What's up guys, it's Johnny Candido of Candido Training HQ. In today's video I wanted to talk about a topic that I was already going to discuss, but it's especially relevant given my last video, my low bar squat with 550, how my form broke down. So I want to talk about perfect form versus training with just focusing on heavy weights. And this is a bit of a false dichotomy in my opinion, and I have a feeling that you guys are going to know what my answer is for as far as what you should use, what you should focus on as a trainee. And that is, in my opinion, you should focus on perfect form every time, or at least just proper form. Obviously, you don't want to obsess about all the little tiny details, but in general, the main focus should be to have proper biomechanics in each lift that you perform. But then on the other end of the spectrum, what happens is people see this, and then they become quote-unquote form Nazis, as people call them. They start basically calling people out on any variation, and the problem is there are different movements and there are different styles to each lift. So let's say for the dumbbell row, there's an actual variation called the croc row, which was created by a powerlifter, and what he does is he takes the heaviest dumbbell he can find and he just cranks out as many reps as possible. But what you'll see is that he uses a short range of motion and a lot of momentum. And the thing is, he does this intentionally and he does it from start to finish. So that is the key. You'll also see Arnold Schwarzenegger was a big proponent of doing cheat curls. I'll give another example of someone who does a sort of unorthodox movement, and that is Pete Rubish. When he does barbell rows, I saw he uses a lot of his lower body, and he essentially does a mix between a deadlift and a row. And he does it extremely heavy with, I think he did a 500-pound row. And the thing is, this man deadlifts 800 pounds. So, I mean, are you going to tell him that what he's doing is wrong when the reality is it's probably a great exercise because it sort of blends in those two movements and probably has even better carryover than a regular barbell row when talking about it translating into performance into the deadlift. So that's why we need to take this into account, that there are different variations, there are different ways to do movements. I do dumbbell rows with an extremely big range of motion intentionally to use just as big a range of motion as possible and to train the shoulder retraction as well as possible. But a bodybuilder who's just looking to activate his lats doesn't need to do this. All he needs to do is bring it to where his elbows are even with his body, and that's all the lat activation you're going to get out of that movement. Another huge problem with this way that people look at heavyweight versus proper form, and they don't really distinguish between variations of lifts, is that their definition of what is heavy becomes distorted. If I'm doing, let's say, a 4-rep strict bicep curl, and I'm using very strict form, but I'm going 4 reps and then failing, that is heavy, because that's heavy in terms of intensity, in terms of my both rate of perceived effort and the percentage of my 1-rep max that I'm using. However, now if I'm doing a cheat curl, and let's say I do an easy set of 10, but I'm using heavier weights than that strict form curl, that's light though, because I'm doing an easy set of 10, and it's not really pushing my limits. It's not heavy relative to my 1-rep max, nor is it heavy relative to my rate of perceived effort. I'm not going near failure. So this is a very important distinction, and it's something that I see people mess up. So that's it guys. To summarize, I want you to always focus on having proper mechanics in every single lift, but just understand what type of movement you're doing, and don't necessarily limit yourself to doing what is considered to be the textbook form for a particular lift. Be open to certain variations, but just understand their role and be very clear in your mind and write down that you're doing that style of lift. Don't pretend like it's anything else, and don't allow your form to shift midway through a set. That will allow for the best progressive overload, as now you're tracking your real progress. Alright, that's it guys. Make sure to like the video to support the channel. Subscribe if you haven't already, and thanks for watching guys. Peace!